I'm Mr. Brown, and this is Skills, Reels, and Refuge. Hello, friends and neighbors. It's time for a Bible study. It's going to be a little lengthy, but we're going to read 4 or 5 chapters. And I will probably talk a little bit about, as I read down through it, and help explain maybe what's going on. We're going to go back to the Old Testament, and we're going to be reading in Judges, starting in chapter 13. And this is going in chapter 13. It's going to be talking about the birth of Samson. Bear with me on some of these words because I may not pronounce them right, but I'll do the best I can. But I would recommend that you go back and read all these chapters. Judges chapter 13, starting in verse 1. Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now there was a certain man from Zorah of the family of Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Indeed now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink. Do not eat anything unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. So the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. And he said to me, she's going to tell her husband what he said to her, what the angel said to her. Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again, and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband, and said to him, Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me. So Manoah arose and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. Manoah said, Now let your words come to pass. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work? So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord at the time. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, that when your words come to pass we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it up to the rock, up on the rock to the Lord. And he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. It happened as the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. When Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell to their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die because we have seen God. But his wife said to him, If the Lord has desired to kill us, he would not have accepted the burnt offering and the grain offering from our hands. Nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as these at this time. So the woman bore a son and called the name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him. Between Zorah and Eshtaol, Eshtaol. So that's chapter 13. So let's look back just for a second. Let's discuss what a Nazarite, I would pronounce it Nazarite, but from my understanding it's Nazarite to God. Nazarite's a vow to God. And there were certain things you had to do to, if you made this vow, there were certain things you had to do. Now you could voluntarily make this vow to God, and then after a certain amount of time, then if you upheld that vow, then it went to the wayside. You didn't have to continue it. But the angel told Manoah's wife that Samson was to be in this vow from the womb till his death. So what is the law of a Nazarite? You can look in Numbers beginning in chapter 6, and it explains some things that you have to do. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak of the children of Israel, and say to them, When either a man or a woman consecrates an offering to take the vow of a Nazarite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and similar drink, and he shall drink neither vinegar made from wine, nor vinegar made from similar drink, nor shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat fresh grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from the seed to the skin. All the days of the vow of separation, no razor shall come upon his head until the days are fulfilled for which he separates himself. To the Lord he shall be holy. Then he shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow, all the days that he separates himself from the Lord. So all the days that he's in this vow, he cannot cut his hair. All the days that he separates himself from the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean even for his father or his mother, for his brother or his sister when they die. So he's not supposed to touch them, but he's not even supposed to go near them. If he's in this vow, separating himself to God, if some of his family members passes away, he's not even supposed to help bury them. He's not supposed to be near them. And just to give you an idea, it says, and if anyone dies very suddenly beside him, you could be sitting there and someone pass away beside you, then you've got certain things you got to do because you've been close to a dead body. It says, you shall, and if anyone dies very suddenly beside him and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head on the day of his cleansing on the seventh day. So it was a tradition on the seventh day. If you buried somebody, then you were considered unclean for 7 days. And then if this happened, and you wouldn't even have no control over it, but if someone passed away beside you, then after 7 days, then you were to shave your head, and your vow was going to be. And there's other things you had to do. You had to make take some pigeons, and you had to make a sacrifice, and you can read on in chapter 6 and see more about that. So we see what Nazarite, what it consists of. And Samson was supposed to be this way from the day of his birth till the end of his time. So he was never to come in contact with dead bodies. He was never to drink wine and vinegar and anything to do with the fruit of the vine. And he was never to shave his head. He was never to cut his hair. So we're going to go to chapter 14. And this chapter is going to be talking about Samson, a Philistine or Philistine wife. Beginning in chapter 14. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah for the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife of the uncircumcised Philistine? So Manoah don't understand why he's wanting a Philistine or Philistine wife. There was a tradition to really not go out of the company of the people that you were with. When Manoah said his people, the uncircumcised. And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and tore the lion apart, as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. That's different, isn't it? I believe that if I would have smote a lion with my bare hands, I probably would have went to my mother and father first, but not Samson. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. After some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. He took some of it in his hand and went along eating. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they also ate, but he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there for young men used to do so. And it happened when they saw him that they brought 30 companions with him. Then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing." And they said to him, "Pose your riddle that we may hear it." So he said to them, Samson said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife, "Entice your husband that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire." That's pretty serious, isn't it? Either you get out of him what the riddle says, or we're going to burn you, your father, and your house. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so? Then Samson's wife wept on him and said, You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me." And he said to her, "Look, I have not explained it to my father or my mother, so should I explain it to you?" Now she had wept on him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, this is what they explained the riddle meant. "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" And he said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." So he knows that his wife went and told, after him telling her, went and told him what it meant. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to a companion who had been his best man. So Samson's wife had been given away. So now we're going to start in chapter 15. After a while in time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat and said, "Let me go to my wife in her room." But her father would not permit him to go in. Her father said, "I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead." And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines, for I harm them, if I harm them. Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes. That's a pretty good feat, isn't it? 300 foxes. And he took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. When he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and buried up both the shocks, and the standing, and burned. I can't read. And burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite." It may be Timnit. Because he had taken his wife and given her his companion. So the Philistines, or Philistines, gave up and buried her and her father with fire. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Samson said to them, "Since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease." So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cliff of the rock of Edom. Now the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" So they answered, "We have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cliff of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us?" And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." But they said to him, "We have come down to arrest you, that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines." Then Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves." So they spoke to him, saying, "No, but we will tie you securely and deliver you to their hand, but we will surely not kill you." And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mighty upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and he killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men." And so it was, when he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called that place Lehi. And then he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said, "You have given me this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised." So God split the hollow place that is Lehi, and water came out, and he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So we see that God had given Samson mighty strength. He slayed 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey. So now we're going to go to 16, final chapter. And this is going to be talking about Samson and Delilah. 16, verse 1. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, and went in to her. When the Gazites were told Samson had come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They were quiet all night, saying, In the morning, when it is daylight, we will kill him. And Samson lay low till midnight. Then he arose at midnight, took hold of the doors of the gate of the city, and the two gate posts, pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. So we see Samson showing his strength again. We also see that Samson has a woman problem. And then we're going to see, as he comes up with Delilah, that's going to create even more of a problem. So after he left the city of Hebron, and he had carried the massive gates, post and all, to the top of the hill and left it. I'm sure that was a sight for people to see, because one man ain't supposed to be able to do that. Afterward it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Zorah, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, Entice him, and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah's she's not Samson's wife. And the Philistines have offered her 1,100 pieces of silver. Every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver, because they're wanting to kill or make slave of Samson. So Delilah said to Samson, Please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you. And Samson said to her, If they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, then I shall become weak and be like another man. So the lords of the Philistines brought up her 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, and she bound him with them. Now men were lying in wait, staying with her in the room, and she said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he broke the bowstrings as a strand of yarn breaks when it touches fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, Look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with. So he said to her, If they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and like any other man. Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And men were lying and waiting, staying in the room, but he broke them off his arms like a thread. Delilah said to Samson, Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with. Now I don't know about you, but I think after the first time I'd be probably not offering, but he's toiling with her and the Philistines. He's toiling with them. And so here we go, a fourth time. And I have a fly that's bothering me. She said, Delilah said to Samson, Till now you have mocked me and told me, Tell me what you may be bound with. And he said to her, If you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of a loom. So she wove it tightly with the batten of a loom and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled out the batten and web from the loom. Then she said to him, How can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me? I'm thinking, how can you love her when she's trying to betray you? You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pretended, all day long, every day, him daily with her words, and pressed him, so that his soul was vexed to death, and that he told her all his heart, and said to her, No razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. For I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. Now, one thing that I didn't mention earlier, to the vow that Samson, he wasn't to be near dead bodies, and we know that he slayed 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone. We know that he went and seen a harlot, and we know that he's with a woman now that he's not married to. So Samson's not being truly godly, is he? He kind of seems like he's letting his strength kind of overwhelm his vow to God. He's not being exactly true to his vow. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, and sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up once more, for he has told me all his heart. So the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hand. Then she lulled him to sleep on her knees, and called for the man, and had him shaved off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. So he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before and other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. So that was part of his vow, to be a Nazarite, the vow. Well, he wasn't supposed to have his head shaven from the time of his birth till his death. And he let Delilah talk him in. He told him his strength. Why? I don't know for sure. But we know he broke his vow, because he wasn't supposed to have his hair cut. And the Lord departed from him. Then the Philistines took him and put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza. It's a Samson. They poked his eyes out. They bound him with bronze fetters, and he became a grinder in the prison. So he was grinding grain. in prison. That's what he did day in and day out. He was blind. I'm assuming he may have walked like an animal, like they used animals to turn the grinding wheel. But that's what he did. He was blind. He was in prison. He had disobeyed his vow to God, and God had departed from him, because when he cut his hair, he lost all of his strength. Now he's grinding grain day in and day out in prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaven. Now to continue on 16. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, Our God hath delivered unto our hand Samson, our enemy, their false god. When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, Our God hath delivered into our hands our enemy, the destroyer of our land. And they one who multiplied our dead. So the one that had killed many of the Philistines, of their people. So it happened when their hearts were merry, that they said, Call for Samson, that he may perform for us. So they called for Samson from the prison, and he performed for them, and they stationed him between the pillars. Then Samson said to the lad who had led him by the hand, Let me feel the pillars which support the temple. So in other words, stand me up against the pillar. Let me feel with my hands the pillars that support this temple. He said, so that I can lean on them. Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, all the leaders. About 3,000 men and women were on the roof, watching while Samson performed. So Samson has seen that he's, turned from God. He has humility now. He's humbled himself before God. He has seen his wrong ways, and he humbled himself before God. And this is what he prays to God. Then Samson called to the Lord, saying, O Lord God, remember me, I pray. I pray, Lord, that you remember me. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once. Give me my strength back, Lord, just one more time. You remember, he was supposed to free Israel from the Philistines. That was his duty. That's why he was born. He was supposed to, that was his duty. And he said, Lord, remember me. And he prayed to God that I may once more, that once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on a Philistine for my 2 eyes. So he's prayed to God, God, just one more time, give me strength. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, one on the right and one on his left. Then Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed with all his might and the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his own death, during his own death, were more than he had killed in his life. All the other Philistines and others together at that one time. And remember, all the lords, all the leaders were in that temple. We're all there mocking him and praising their false god that he had delivered them to them. And it's a very interesting account, isn't it? So there's many, many lessons in this, as there always is in God's Word, but one thing that I take from it, God had given Samson life, and he was told the vow that he was supposed to keep from his childhood to his death, and he strayed away from that. And God left him. No longer did God give him his strength. But Samson, while in prison and while he had his eyes, both eyes, he was blind. The humility, he humbled, he realized, and he prayed to God for strength. One more time. Give me strength. One more time, Lord. And God did. God gives us free will, just like he did Samson. We have a choice to serve God or not to serve God. I have that choice. You have that choice. Samson chose in part of his life not to serve God. And then when he was all humbled and he prayed to God to grant one more thing, give him his strength one more time. And God did. Now, Samson was given to Manoah and his wife. But God didn't force Samson. He had a vow. That's why God had given Samson to be born, to free the Israel from the Philistines. But God didn't make Samson do everything. He had a free will, just like I said, we have a free will. He didn't force him. He made the choices. Sometimes we make choices in life that's not right. Sometimes life is hard on us and we might turn from God. Maybe we've never become a Christian. Maybe we need to be baptized into Christ, to be added to his church, to be added to the Lamb's Book of Life. Or maybe we have and we've fallen away. But God has not forgot you or me, just like he didn't forget Samson. He turned away from him, but he didn't forget him. Now sometimes the sins that are committed, they can be forgiven. There is not a sin that cannot be forgiven. You may think that you've done something too bad, that your life's been too bad, but that's not so. That's not true. You can be forgiven by doing God's will. You can be forgiven. Now sometimes them sins that we do may have lifelong consequences. In Samson's case, he was blind and in prison, grinding grain. There may be just, different sins, different things that you can be forgiven for that sin, but that sin you may be reminded of that sin, and it would depend on what it is. I mean, the rest of your life, but that would just be the way it was. It just depended on what kind of sin that you had committed, whether you would have remembrance or bad things that would come to you because of this sin. Bad things as far as, family or friends or whatever it may be. But you can be forgiven for that sin. God will forgive you if you become a child of God, baptized into Christ. All them past sins can be forgiven. So I urge you to read. I may not have covered everything exactly like I intended to, but read Judges 13 through 16. Go back to Numbers chapter 6 and see the vow of I keep saying it wrong. I want to say Nazarite, but it's Nazirite. Nazarite, I believe. But anyway, go back and read. It's a very interesting account. It shows us an example that God never forgives us. Never forgets us, but He can and will forgive us. He never forgets us. Now, if we turn away from Him, He's not with us. But if we turn to Him, He's with us and will never forsake us. So I hope that you enjoyed this today, and I hope that you get something by it. And I forgot to turn my phone off, and I'm getting messages. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you get something from it. And I encourage you to study God's Word, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of this week, and hopefully we'll get to do this again. I intend to do more, and I don't do them as often as I should, or maybe as often as I like, but I intend to do more. So everyone have a good rest of your day or night, or whenever this video comes to you, and God bless everybody.